My husband walked out on me on the very same day we said our vows. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but instead, it turned into the most painful one I had ever experienced. I cried and cried until my chest hurt, and it felt as though the tears would never stop. They weren't just tears of sadness, they were tears of regret, shame, and disbelief. How did my life come to this? If only I had known, if only I could have seen the signs, I would never have allowed myself to fall into such a situation. I kept thinking about all the choices I had made that led me to this point. But now, here I was, left alone, broken, and with no way to turn back time. My dreams of a perfect marriage had crumbled within hours, and I couldn't help but ask myself, how could I have been so blind? My name is Anita, and I come from a small, quiet community where traditions and family values are everything. In our village, people live simple lives, working hard during the day and gathering with loved ones in the evenings to share laughter and stories. For the most part, I was happy and content with my life. But everything changed the year I turned 21. In my community, turning 21 was a big milestone. It was the age when everyone expected you to start thinking seriously about marriage. For some, it was exciting, a time to dream about their future and the family they would build. For me, it felt like a heavy responsibility. The whispers from neighbors, the subtle hints from family, and the curious looks from friends all reminded me that the clock was ticking. I didn't know it then, but my life was about to take a turn I never could have imagined. What started as a season of joy and possibilities became the beginning of a story filled with love, betrayal, and heartache, one that would change me forever. I met John, my first boyfriend, through some mutual friends in our small community. From the moment we started talking, I could tell he was different. John was kind, gentle, and always went out of his way to make me smile. He didn't have much, no fancy clothes, no big house, and no car, but what he had was a heart full of love. He treated me like I was the most important person in his world, and I cherished every moment we spent together. For an entire year, our relationship grew stronger. We would take long walks, share our dreams, and laugh about silly things. John's love was simple and pure, and I felt lucky to have him in my life. I believed we had something special, something that could stand the test of time. But life in my family wasn't easy. We struggled to make ends meet, and there were days when food on the table felt like a blessing. I could feel the weight of those struggles pressing down on me. It wasn't that I didn't love John, I just started to wonder if love alone was enough. Then, one ordinary day, something extraordinary happened. I met someone new, someone who seemed to have everything John didn't. That meeting would change the course of my life forever, pulling me into a world of choices I never thought I'd have to make. It was on a busy afternoon at the local market that I first met Mr. Frederick, a man who seemed larger than life. He was a wealthy businessman, well known in the community for his charm and generosity. At 45 years old, he was twice my age, but there was something about the way he carried himself with so much confidence and power that drew me in. His polished appearance and smooth words were so different from what I was used to, and I couldn't help but feel intrigued. At first, our conversations were casual, just polite exchanges as we passed by each other. But over time, they grew longer and more personal. He started asking about my life, my family, and my dreams. His attention made me feel special, like I mattered in a way I hadn't before. Before I knew it, Mr. Frederick began to show more interest in me. He took me to fancy restaurants I'd only ever dreamed of and gave me money, which helped ease some of my family's struggles. His generosity allowed me to support not only my parents but even John, who often needed help with little things. But as Frederick became a bigger part of my life, I found myself feeling torn. On one hand, there was John, kind, loving, and genuine. On the other hand, there was Frederick, who could offer me financial security and a life I never thought possible. It felt like I was being pulled between two worlds, one where my heart belonged, and the other that promised comfort and stability. I didn't know which one to choose, but deep down, I feared that whatever decision I made would change my life forever. It wasn't long before Frederick opened up to me, confessing his feelings in a way that caught me completely off guard. He told me he cared for me deeply and wanted to know if I was single. In that moment, I hesitated, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. I should have told the truth. But instead, I lied. Yes, I'm single, I said softly, convincing myself it was the right thing to do. After all, his support had made such a difference in my life, and I couldn't afford to lose it. From that day on, my life became a delicate balancing act. I was now secretly dating both John and Frederick, two men who couldn't have been more different. John, with his simple and honest love, and Frederick, with his wealth and charm, each held a piece of my heart. I kept my secret tightly guarded, refusing to let anyone see the cracks in my double life. At first, I told myself it was harmless. I needed Frederick's financial help to support my family, and I couldn't bring myself to let go of John, whose love felt so pure. But as time went on, the weight of my choices began to press down on me. Every time I was with one of them, I felt the guilt of betraying the other. Yet, I couldn't stop. I was caught in a web of my own making, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. John and I continued our relationship as if nothing had changed. He had no idea about Frederick or the secret life I was living. One evening, he came over to my small apartment. We talked about our dreams, our future, and the life we wanted to build together. His eyes were full of love and hope, and for a moment, I forgot about all my lies. That night, John and I shared a bond stronger than ever before. We laughed until our stomachs ached, reminiscing about childhood memories and dreaming about the future we could build together. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us in that moment. His smile was warm, his touch gentle, and his love felt pure, like nothing could ever come between us. As the night deepened, so did our closeness. We held each other tightly, as if afraid to let go. For the first time, we shared the bed together, letting our emotions guide us. In that moment, I didn't care about the consequences. The thought of getting pregnant didn't cross my mind, or perhaps I didn't mind if it happened. All I cared about was the way he made me feel safe, cherished, and truly loved. But even as I reveled in the warmth of his love, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. I wasn't being honest with John, and I knew it. The guilt of my secret life with Frederick loomed over me, yet I shoved it aside. I'll deal with it later, I told myself, unwilling to let anything ruin that night. A few days later, Frederick invited me to meet him at one of the upscale restaurants he owned. The moment I stepped inside, I felt like I had entered another world. The air was filled with the soft hum of classical music, the tables were dressed in pristine white linen, and chandeliers hung from the ceiling, sparkling like stars in the night sky. It was the kind of place I had only ever seen in movies, and for a moment, I felt like a princess in a fairy tale. Frederick greeted me with his usual charm, his warm smile making me feel special. He pulled out my chair like a true gentleman, and as we dined, he showered me with compliments. "Anita, you light up every room you walk into," he said, his eyes twinkling. His words made me blush, and I couldn't help but laugh at his effortless way of making me feel at ease. For most of the evening, we talked about everything and nothing, our dreams, our favorite childhood memories, and even the little things that made us happy. But as the night wore on, I noticed a shift in his tone. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low and serious whisper. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression unreadable. My heart skipped a beat. The way he looked at me, the weight in his voice, I knew whatever he was about to say would change everything. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm married," he admitted, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. The words hit me like a thunderclap. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt as though the room had started spinning. I tried to speak, but no words came out. Seeing my shock, Frederick quickly continued, as if trying to soften the blow. "But it's not what you think," he said urgently. "My wife left me years ago. She couldn't handle the fact that I can't have children. It's a health issue I've been dealing with for years, something I can't change." I stared at him, stunned. His confession stirred a storm of emotions inside me, confusion, pity, and a lingering unease. I didn't know what to say or how to feel, but Frederick didn't let go of my hand. "You're different, Anita," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "You make me feel alive again. I haven't felt this way in years. I want us to take our relationship to the next level." His words were tender, almost pleading, and for a moment, I forgot about everything else, the lies I was living, the choices I was making. In that beautiful, candlelit restaurant, it felt like the world had faded away, leaving only the two of us. I didn't know what the future held, but at that moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, Frederick's love could make everything better. Frederick's confession hit me harder than I expected. As he spoke, I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, and with each sentence, my inner conflict grew. Here was a man who had given me so much: his time, his wealth, his attention. He had shown me a world I never thought I'd be a part of, one filled with luxury and the promise of stability. He was asking for more, something deeper, something that would tie us together in ways I wasn't sure I was ready for. My mind screamed at me to stop, to think, to walk away before things got even more complicated. There were so many voices in my head, voices telling me I was making a mistake, telling me to go back to John, to choose the love that had been genuine and simple. But Frederick's words were like a gentle pull, drawing me closer, and the quiet part of me, the part that had longed for security, whispered that maybe this was what I needed. Maybe this was the answer to all the questions I had about my future. The warning bells in my mind kept ringing louder, but they felt distant, like a sound I couldn't quite reach. I tried to silence them, tried to drown them out with the warmth of his hand in mine and the promise of a life filled with excitement and luxury. How could I say no to someone who seemed to offer everything I thought I needed? I looked into his eyes, and despite the storm inside me, I found myself nodding. The words slipped out, almost as if they weren't my own. "Okay," I whispered. I didn't fully understand why I had agreed, but in that moment, it felt like the only choice. The only way forward. That night, I crossed another line I knew I could never uncross. At the moment, I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. Frederick's support was easing my burdens, helping my family, making my life so much easier than it had ever been before. His wealth and kindness felt like a safe haven, like something I could depend on when everything else seemed uncertain. But even as I told myself that, a quiet voice inside me whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. I was building my future on a shaky foundation, one made of lies and hidden secrets. Each lie I told seemed harmless at first, justifications to make myself feel better, to keep my world from falling apart. But deep down, I knew that lying to both John and Frederick wasn't something that would stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the truth would find its way to the surface, and when it did, everything I'd carefully built would come crashing down around me. But I pushed that nagging thought aside. I told myself I could deal with it later, that I didn't need to worry about it right now. I was too caught up in the promises Frederick had made, in the life I thought I was finally creating. Yet, somewhere deep inside, I knew that no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the truth would always be there, waiting to shatter the fragile world I had built. 3 weeks later, I started feeling strange, as if something was off with my body. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just stress or maybe something small that would pass. But as the days went by, the feeling only grew stronger, and soon, I couldn't ignore it any longer. Worried, I decided to go for a medical checkup, hoping it was nothing serious. The moment the doctor confirmed what I feared, my world stopped. I was pregnant. The news hit me like a heavy weight, and for a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My mind raced in 1,000 directions, each thought more confusing than the last. How had this happened? Who was the father? My heart pounded in my chest as panic set in. The truth was, I had no idea who had gotten me pregnant. Was it John, the man who had loved me so deeply and so genuinely? Or was it Frederick, the wealthy man who had given me everything else but hadn't been honest with me? The thought of not knowing made me feel like I was falling into a dark hole. Confessing the truth, admitting my mistake, terrified me. How could I tell either of them? How could I explain the mess I had created without losing everything? Fear gripped me tightly, and I felt as if I was standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing which way to fall. When I finally gathered the courage to tell Frederick about the pregnancy, I expected him to be shocked, maybe even upset. But what I didn't expect was the cold, dismissive reaction I got. As soon as the words left my mouth, he shook his head quickly, his face hardening. "No, Anita," he said firmly, almost angrily. "It's not mine. You must be mistaken. He went on to explain that his medical condition made it impossible for him to father a child. He said it with such certainty, as if my pregnancy was nothing more than a lie he couldn't be bothered to deal with. His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stood there, stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. "I can't be the father," he repeated, his voice cold. "It's physically impossible. My wife left me because of it, you know that." With that, he turned and walked away without another word, leaving me standing there alone, my heart heavy with confusion and hurt. His rejection was sharp and final. I felt as though everything I had hoped for had just crumbled in front of me. The man who had promised so much, who had made me feel special, now had turned his back on me without a second thought. I was left to face the consequences of my choices all alone, unsure of what to do next or how to make sense of the mess I had created. Feeling lost and desperate, I turned to John. He was the one I had loved first, the one who had always been there for me. I thought that maybe, just maybe, he would offer me the support I so badly needed. But when I told him about the pregnancy, the reaction I received shattered me. His face twisted in anger, and before I could even explain, he accused me of cheating. "This can't be mine, Anita," he yelled, his voice filled with hurt. "I didn't release inside you that night, remember? I've been careful." His words struck me like a dagger, and the pain in his eyes was something I couldn't ignore. "How could you do this to me?" he continued, his anger growing. "I trusted you, and now you've betrayed me." I tried to explain, to tell him that I didn't know who the father was, but my words fell on deaf ears. His mind was made up. In his eyes, I had already broken his trust. And just like that, without giving me a chance to speak, he ended our relationship. "It's over, Anita. I can't be with someone who would lie to me like this," he said, his voice cold and final. With those words, John walked out of my life. My heart sank as I stood there, watching him leave. In that moment, I felt more alone than ever before. My world had crumbled, and I had no one left to turn to. The weight of my mistakes was now heavier than I could bear. Heartbroken and abandoned, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders as I faced the reality of my pregnancy alone. No one was there to offer me comfort or advice. It was just me and the life growing inside me. The thought of becoming a mother terrified me, but as the days passed, I knew there was no turning back. This was my new reality. When my son was finally born, everything changed. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something other than pain. He was a beautiful baby boy, with big, curious eyes and soft, dark curls that made my heart swell with love. The moment I held him in my arms, I made a promise to myself. I would do everything in my power to be the best mother I could be. It wasn't easy. Raising a child on my own was harder than I could have ever imagined. There were sleepless nights, tears, and moments when I felt like giving up. But every time I looked at my son's smiling face, all the exhaustion seemed to fade away. His laughter, his giggles, the way he would look up at me with trust in his eyes, these small moments gave me the strength I needed to keep going. I may have been alone, but in my son, I found a reason to keep fighting. His smile became my source of hope, my reminder that no matter how difficult things got, I wasn't truly alone. I had him, and that was all that mattered. 5 months after my son was born, I met Paul. He was everything I had been longing for: kind, patient, and full of warmth. From the moment we started talking, I felt a connection I hadn't experienced in a long time. Paul made me feel seen, heard, and valued in ways I had forgotten were possible. His gentle smile and thoughtful words were like a balm for my heart, which had been bruised by so much pain. He had a way of making everything feel right, even on my darkest days. Paul treated me with the utmost respect. He listened when I spoke, and his actions always matched his words. He was everything I had ever dreamed of in a partner. I began to feel that maybe, just maybe, I could start fresh. With him, I could forget the mistakes and secrets of my past and build something beautiful for the future. But despite how good things seemed, I couldn't shake the fear that hung over me. I was terrified that Paul would reject me if he knew the truth about my past, about my child. I wasn't ready to tell him. I was afraid that if he found out, he would walk away, just like the others had done. So, I made the painful decision to hide it. I kept my son a secret, afraid that it would ruin the chance of a future with Paul. I told myself that once things were more serious, I would tell him everything. But deep down, I knew it was wrong to keep such an important part of my life hidden from him. Still, I hoped that in time, he would fall in love with me enough to overlook my past. Paul and I grew closer with each passing day. Our bond deepened in ways I never imagined possible. He was always there for me, supporting me in ways that made me believe in love again. After 3 months of dating, he proposed. The moment he got down on one knee, my heart skipped a beat. I was overjoyed, my emotions running wild. I had never felt so loved, so cherished. Without hesitation, I said yes. The wedding planning was a whirlwind. Everything seemed to fall into place so perfectly, and I could hardly believe how lucky I was to have found someone like Paul. On our wedding day, everything was magical. The air was filled with love and excitement, and as I walked down the aisle, I felt like I was living in a dream. Paul's smile as he waited for me at the altar made my heart swell with happiness. For the first time in years, I truly felt like everything was right. I felt like I had finally found the happiness I had been searching for. But just as quickly as that joy came, it began to slip away. The happiness I thought would last forever was short-lived. Something unexpected was about to shatter the fragile life I had worked so hard to build. The truth about my past was catching up with me, and no matter how hard I tried to hide it, it was about to be exposed. What I didn't know was that my stepsister, who had always known about my past, had other plans for the wedding day. As the reception began and everyone was celebrating, she saw an opportunity to share the truth with Paul. With a smile on her face, she approached him, congratulating him on his marriage. "You're a good man," she said, "for accepting Anita, even with all the baggage she carries. It's admirable that you've chosen to marry her, despite the fact that she has a child from a previous relationship." Her words echoed in the air, and everything seemed to stop for a moment. Paul's face changed, his smile faltering as he processed what she had just said. I stood frozen, my heart racing in my chest. I hadn't expected this at all. My worst fear had come true. My stepsister, with no regard for the consequences, had decided that the truth needed to come out, and it was now in the open, in front of everyone. I could see the confusion and shock in Paul's eyes, and I knew that my world was about to crumble once again. Paul didn't wait a second. As soon as he heard those words from my stepsister, he turned to me, his eyes filled with disbelief and hurt. His voice was sharp as he demanded, "Is it true? Is everything she said about you and your past true?" The room seemed to close in around me. The weight of his question made it hard to breathe, and for a moment, I just stood there, too stunned to speak. I could feel the eyes of our guests on us, their whispers filling the silence between us. I had hoped to keep my secret hidden, but now there was no escaping the truth. Slowly, I nodded, my heart sinking with each passing second. "Yes, it's true. I have a child from a previous relationship. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid of what you would think." Paul's face fell. The anger that had been brewing inside him was clear now, his disappointment written across every feature. His eyes, once full of warmth and affection, now held nothing but coldness. He took a step back, his words bitter. "I can't trust you anymore, Anita. How can I, when you kept something so important from me?" The pain in his voice cut through me, deeper than anything I had ever felt before. The person I had hoped would be my future, the one who made me feel safe and loved, was now walking away. His rejection felt like a heavy blow, and in that moment, I realized just how much I had lost. Just 4 hours after our wedding, Paul made a decision that shattered everything. He sat me down and, with a look of finality in his eyes, told me, "I can't do this. I can't build a life with someone who lied to me from the very beginning." His words struck me like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. The love I had thought we shared, the life I had dreamed of, all seemed to crumble before my eyes. He didn't even give me a chance to explain or make things right. He had made up his mind. I stood there, frozen, unable to speak. The room felt so cold, the warmth of the celebration that had just been ours now replaced by a suffocating silence. Paul turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in my heart as he disappeared out the door. There I was, still in my wedding dress, the one I had imagined wearing for so long, but now it felt like a costume of lies. Tears began to fall, slow and steady, and I couldn't stop them. Each tear was a reflection of the broken promises, the lost dreams, and the painful truth that had finally caught up with me. All I had left was the overwhelming emptiness of the life I thought I was starting. That night, as I sat alone in the silence of my empty home, my thoughts swirled around the choices I had made. I replayed every moment, every decision, over and over in my mind. If only I had been honest from the very start, if only I had chosen love instead of chasing after material wealth, things might have turned out differently. I thought about John, the man who had loved me with all his heart, and how I had betrayed him. I thought about Frederick, whose wealth and attention had clouded my judgment, leading me down a path I never should have walked. And then there was Paul, the man who had seen something special in me, who had trusted me, only to be crushed by my lies. The weight of my actions hit me harder than I ever expected. I had hurt everyone, my family, my friends, and most of all, myself. The life I had tried to build was nothing but a web of deceit, and now I was left with the painful consequences. I realized that the things I thought would make me happy, money, security, and status, meant nothing when compared to the love and trust one had lost. The truth was, I had sacrificed my peace of mind, my relationships, and my own integrity for fleeting comforts that didn't matter in the end. My journey had been long and painful, but it had taught me some invaluable lessons. I had learned the true value of honesty, the kind of honesty that isn't just about telling the truth, but about living it every day. I understood now that integrity is not something you can borrow or fake, it's something that grows from within and is the foundation of every relationship. I also realized how dangerous selfish decisions can be. The choices I made out of fear, greed, and insecurity had hurt so many people, including myself. I had thought I was making the best decisions for me, but in reality, I had been running away from the most important things in life: love, trust, and the truth. Though my heart was still heavy with regret, I promised myself that I would change. I had to become a better person, not just for my son, but for myself. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. It would take time to rebuild what I had broken, but I was determined. My son deserved a mother who could look him in the eyes with no shame, and I deserved a life of peace, free from the lies and regrets that had haunted me for so long. Life after the divorce was challenging, but in the midst of it all, I found comfort in my son. His smile was like a light that guided me through the darkest days. Slowly, I began to pick up the pieces of my life, one step at a time. I focused on being the best mother I could be, pouring all my love into raising him. In time, I realized that healing didn't come from forgetting the past, it came from accepting it. I had to forgive myself for the mistakes I made and let go of the weight I had been carrying for so long. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. While I may never forget the pain of that day, I now see it differently. Every mistake I made was like a lesson hidden in the struggle, teaching me about my own strength, resilience, and the power to rise again. My story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about learning, growing, and embracing the chance to start over. I found that even after the hardest of times, there is always a way forward, one small step at a time. Honesty is the best policy. Lies, no matter how small, can have devastating consequences.